This is the spiral mound that we have talked about, Doug Hill Summit, right? That is like a lookout point for like a lot of what I call the blast zone. And here's Palmer Event Center, right? And so Palmer Event Center, just go back. This is actually Palmer Event Center. And I had thought it was this. And I sent you this picture, right? Because that shit just looks like the fucking cyclotron up top of what's down below, right? But it's actually, this is Palmer, right? And it's got that sort of mid-century modern roof that I talk about quite a bit, right? Yep. It's a mid-century modern building. But this is right next door to it, right? This is the Long Center. And right after I sent you the picture the other day, I got called out to exactly this location to do cocktails. This only happens. I only ever get called to, I hardly ever get called to locations. But if I've just like made some meaningful statement about some location, I immediately get called to that location, which I've never been to before, to come and make cocktails. And I always end up learning something fascinating about the place based on having been called there, which I did. And I talk, I'll people who are getting this will probably have seen the dump. I'll send you the dump so you can see what I said about it. I'm not going to repeat history here. But this is the power center of Austin. There is ritual, all kinds of stuff going on in this complex, whether it be at Palmer Center, Long Center, or Doug Hill, or any of the other places that are in this few block radius, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting that usually that happens with like a glass bead game thing or a thing with Jeff, but it happened with you and I sort of the other day. I just got called right to the place right after I talked to you. So weird.
Yeah.
So I think what we're going to have to do is just like, you and I, like, we know what this is. My brain is going to analyze this stuff, whether we do it on shows or not. So we are keeping track, on some level, and like at a later point when like more people begin to get it and we have figured out a more holistic style for ourselves to sort of present this information, then the time might be right for that then. But for right now, if there's not, like, I have someone in the media today that I'm going to talk about in a different way, right? That feels more in line with the way I would like to go with this type of thing sort of going forward. But yeah, so to the extent that you see us sort of reimagining and maybe like it's disheveled and disorganized, it's because we're making we're changing course right now. We're making a shift, or we're at least switching to a different lane on the same highway or something. Because I think it's just, and we both think it's just more useful in the long run for us to do this now instead of continue to do this for another 3 or 6 or 8 or 9 months and just waste time. So
yeah, and I think the last piece that I'll say about it is, yes, if something organically comes up that feels aligned to speak about, yes, we're tracking what's going on. But in the Gene Keys system, which our audience has heard me mention a lot of times, the 27th gene key, which is very prominent in like my own profile, is about how we allot our attention and energy, right? So that particular key goes from the shadow of selfishness to the gift of altruism to the city of selflessness. But the key is in giving. It's knowing what's worthy of giving our attention to and not giving our attention to sinking ships. That ship is fucking sinking. I don't really think there's any reviving it at this point. So that's why I just feel like there's a more productive place for me to be putting my energy. I think we've passed the point of no return with whatever bullshit they're doing.
Yeah, we're going to have to live with the results of our democracy psyop for probably the next 4 to 12 years on some level. And, maybe just like, maybe we're just going to be on the full pendulum swing here. And there might be some things about that are slightly better than what we're living in now. And there's some things that will just end up being confusing and worse or whatever, but people are going to get to experience it and then they'll understand. And that is, that's what it is. And we know what it is. So, right. So It is the R. That this is the way that I have, like, there's a very shorthand way. Like, I'm not saying it requires no more research than this, but like, if your ears should perk up, and this should be the clue that you're listening to the op or part of the op, whether it's intentional or unintentional. The person is part of the op if you hear them say the words "our democracy." End of story. That is, no matter what level you come at that from, whether you think democracy is a good thing or a bad thing, whether you think a republic is a good thing or a bad thing, whether you think government is a good thing or a bad thing, if you hear someone say "our democracy," you are listening to the op. Okay, I feel like one of those people who's like, when you hear this, you're listening to Kiss FM radio or whatever. When you hear "our democracy," that is the op.
Hey, superstars, thank you so much for sharing your sacred attention with me. If you are receiving any value whatsoever from my videos, I am encouraging you to give back, to pay it forward by supporting me on my Patreon community, on my locals community, on both. Your support allows me to keep on keeping on and to keep making content like this. It used to be much easier back in the days of a free press, but now, given all of the censorship and the shadow banning, it really is challenging for content creators to continue to put out so much work. I'll just speak for myself. I'm excited for it to be easier for me to continue to put out more content. And the primary way that it can be easier is by you supporting me financially by way of my Patreon and or my locals, where for as little as $5 a month, you get to be my hero and receive oodles of bonus content, and we both get to win. Okay, thank you so much for your support, for your attention, and for being Omniscopic amazingness.